Good day, Theory 2 students. Today is Monday, April 6th, and this is the next lecture. We are getting closer to our second unit test, and I will talk a little bit about that at the end of this lecture. But I'd like to get through three things today. Number one, I'd like to go over a few of the problems that were on your last homework assignment. And then after that, I'd like to finish up talking about less common chords. And then after that, I'd like to go through some examples with less common chords to get some application for you in order for you to prepare for this next test. And then after that, I will show you the Test 2 review sheet and at least start out the first section for you. So what I have on the screen here right now is the first section of the graded assignment that I sent back to you in the mail dealing with less common chords. The first section here had some part writing, some short part writing that asked you to include a passing 6/4 chord in the progression. And then after you came up with some Roman numerals for that progression, then you'd go ahead and part write the top three voices because I have given you the bass. So hopefully, I'm crossing my fingers that you received that assignment back and graded in the mail. But a couple things I want to mention about it. Number one, if you look closely at the bass line, you will notice that really the only three notes in the bass line that are stepwise in the same direction are these three bass notes right here. The second, the third, and the fourth one. Notice that the distance between the first bass note F and the second bass note D is not a step. And so therefore a passing 6/4 chord could not be used in the first blank or the second blank. So the only place that a passing 6/4 chord could be used in this progression is under the third chord, because the bass note here is the middle note of a three-note stepwise progression moving all in the same direction. We're descending stepwise D, C, and B flat. Another thing that I wanted to point out about this progression, especially how to part write root position 4 to root position 5. This goes way back to Theory 1, but for those of you that had me for Theory 1, you may recall that when you are part writing two root position chords whose roots are a second apart, you are supposed to take the top three voices, soprano, alto, and tenor, and move them in contrary motion to the bass. That is, move them in the opposite direction that the bass is moving. So you can see here, for the last two chords, the bass moves from B flat up a step to C. Therefore, what we need to do in order to avoid all types of parallel fifths and octaves, we need to take the soprano, alto, and tenor and move them to the nearest chord tone, but move them in the downward direction. Because the bass is moving up, we need to have the top three voices move in contrary motion to the bass, or descend. So, in order to get the nearest possible chord tones with the right doubling in the 5 chord, I had to take my D down by step to C, my F down by step to E, and my B flat I took down by the small leap of a third to a G. And in that instance, doing it this way, the correct way, you do not have any parallel fifths or octaves. In the next section of the assignment, section A, I asked you to circle the appropriate key based on the chords and the qualities of the chords over here on the left. And most everyone got this right except for number 2 in this section. You must realize that when it comes to a triad, you can have a diminished triad on scale degree 7 in both major and minor keys. And that would come in the harmonic minor. When you're talking about the minor, we can get a diminished 7 triad in harmonic minor. The only form of the minor scale that we get a capital 7, which you see in the very next exercise, is in the minor key, and that would have to be, I should say, the natural form of the minor. We do not get capital 7 in the harmonic or the ascending form of the melodic minor, only in the natural form of the minor. Here in both the ascending form of the melodic and especially the harmonic minor, we can get a diminished 7 triad in both major and minor keys. The part writing for this section down at the bottom of the front side of the homework looked very good to me overall. I believe all you had to do was, I think, move just one note or so from the left side to get it to be spelled as a 3 chord. And notice again that the 3 chord is used to harmonize the second note of a descending soprano line that goes do, ti, la, so. 3 chords harmonize T in an upper voice, especially the soprano, very well. On the back side of this homework assignment, most everyone got the majority of these blanks filled in correctly. I just want to make a point to let you know that when the minor 5 chord is used, it occurs in first inversion always as a 5/6. We don't use it in root position. We don't use it in second inversion. Now, the minor 5 chord, what it will have in the bass note, because it's in first inversion, what it will have in the bass is not just any old scale degree 7. It will have the lowered scale degree 7. That is the subtonic scale degree, not the leading tone. Another way to think of it or say it is it will have te in the bass, not t in the bass. So you can't just say that it's going to have scale degree 7 in the bass. You have to be very specific. Which scale degree 7? Is it the raised version or the lowered version? And it is indeed the lowered version. Okay. So the 5/6 is going to be over a subtonic or the lowered 7th scale degree in the bass, and it moves between a tonic chord and a 4/6. Yes, it moves to a predominant, that is correct, but very specifically, the only chord that we have seen the minor 5/6 move to is specifically the 4/6, the minor 4/6. And that's all the minor 5/6 will ever go to, is a minor 4/6, no other chord. For the last section on your homework assignment, I believe everyone that I looked at, everyone's paper had the minor 5/6 going to the minor 4/6, just as I mentioned in the section above. One thing you have to be careful about in your part writing is that, now I told you that you could double any note that facilitates or brings about smooth voice leading for the minor 5/6, and that is true. But be careful when you write the minor 4/6 chord. When you part write that chord, remember you are not supposed to double the bass of a minor 4/6 chord. You may double any pitch you'd like in a major 4/6 chord, but in the minor 4/6, do not double the bass. I saw several papers where, I believe it was in the alto voice, there was a middle C written in the alto voice, which actually doubles the bass C for the minor 4/6. And the reason we don't want to double the bass here is because if you have a C in the alto and it moves to the D sharp in the next chord, you are going to get a melodic augmented second. And we know, of course, that melodic augmented seconds are very poor. They are not correct. We're not supposed to write them as we part-write harmonies. So that's why we don't double the bass in the minor 4/6 chord, at least in this case. And instead what I used was an E instead of a C to approach the raised D, the D sharp, to approach it from above, and that is just a half step away rather than an augmented second away. The next part of this lecture, I would like to go through some examples that make use and make you think about how to use the less common chords I talked about in the last lecture. And it might help to, first of all, review some of those chords and also to review some of the qualities of those chords in both major and minor keys. Last class, so to speak, we talked about using the 3 triad, and we know that in major keys the 3 triad is a minor triad, but in minor keys the 3 triad is a major chord. We also talked about using the 7 chord. Now in major keys the 7 triad is diminished. In minor keys, depending on whether you're using the notes from the harmonic minor or the natural minor form of the scale, we can get not only a diminished triad, but we can also get a major 7 triad. Again, this triad, the diminished one on scale degree 7, comes from the harmonic minor. The major triad on scale degree 7 comes from the natural minor, and the root of this chord is te, or the lowered 7th scale degree. And then last but not least, we talked about how to use the minor 5 chord in minor keys. Again, the 5 chord is always major in major keys, and the 5 chord in minor keys is 99% of the time major. But 1% of the time, again, this minor 5 chord is very rare, but 1% of the time, the 5 chord in a minor key can be minor. That comes from the natural form of the minor scale again. And when the minor 5 chord is used, it is used always in first inversion. Please keep straight in your mind that the major 5 chord is always dominant in function. The minor 5 chord does not have dominant function, and it acts and behaves completely different than the major 5 chord in a progression. In fact, we know that the minor 5/6 must always go to a minor 4/6. Okay, with that said, it might be helpful for you to have the handout that I gave you through Canvas last week on the progressions and the special uses of these rare or less common chords. Hopefully, if you have that and you want to put it in front of you to refer to it, that would be great. But if you don't, let's go through and review some of those progressions right now. First of all, I have in the first measure, if you can see that from your vantage point, I have in the key of B flat major a descending soprano line, and it descends by step, and that goes do, ti, la, sol, because we're in a major key. Now think to yourself and try to wean yourself away from looking at the handout that I gave you, because eventually for our next test you will have to have some of these progressions memorized, and you will not be able to use, you should not be using your handout. At any rate, when we have a descending soprano line, that is well, it should be a light bulb turning on in our minds, saying that this is an opportunity to use the 3 chord in a progression. And indeed, since we are in a major key, we can make the progression starting with 1. Usually we always start with 1. Then the second chord would be minor 3, because we're in a major key, and that would harmonize T in the highest voice, the soprano voice. Then after that we would go to a 4 chord most likely, a regular predominant, and then we would finish off at least this progression with maybe a half cadence on a 5 chord. Please be aware that the 3 chord can be regarded as functioning as a predominant, and so it usually again comes immediately before a regular or normal predominant chord. The next progression that I have on the board is in the bass clef, and I have changed the key to A minor. And if you notice these bass notes, they are ascending stepwise. And the bass notes are in the scale or the key of A minor, Do, Re, Mi, Fa, Sol. Now, if you need to look at your handout to remember what less common chord we use to harmonize this progression, go ahead. If you don't need to use the handout, that is terrific. But when you see an ascending bass line, you need to, a light bulb should hopefully go on in your mind, because you've studied this, that you need to use the capital 7 chord. That is the major 7 triad, but you need to use it in first inversion. In first inversion. So, being in a minor key, we'll start the progression with 1, a lowercase 1. Then the next chord in this progression is going to be capital 7 in first inversion. Capital 7, 6. Because a 7 chord in first inversion will have Re in the bass. I didn't leave a lot of room on my case, but the next chord after 7 diminished 6 in this progression actually is a major 3 chord. See if I can cram it in here. A major 3 chord. That will work with Mi in the bass. Then following that, I would go with minor 4, because we're in a minor key, and finish off with capital or major 5. Don't use the minor 5 unless you are using it in first inversion, taking it to a minor 4/6, which we will see in just a few moments. So this is an ascending bass line. The final example that I have on the board for you to see contains a descending bass line. It descends by step. I have changed key once again. I am no longer in A minor, but now I am in D minor. And you'll notice that the bass line descends by step, Do, Te, Le, and Sol. When you see a descending bass line, hopefully that jars in your mind 2 possible progressions. One that uses the major 7 triad in root position, or you may use the minor 5 chord in first inversion. So, if I were to insert some Roman numerals to harmonize this descending bass line, I would start again with a 1 chord, and I'm in a minor key, so it's minor 1, followed by either a capital 7 chord in root position, or I may use the minor 5 chord in first inversion. Either one works in this progression, either the root position 7 or the minor 5/6. Then we know what the next chord is, no matter which chord we use for the second bass note. The third bass note has to be harmonized with a minor 4/6, and then the last one can be harmonized with, again, a major 5. A major 5. You may have some problems that are similar to these on your next test. In other words, I may give you a descending soprano line and ask you to give me all the Roman numerals for that descending soprano line that we have studied that harmonizes that line, and you must include at least one of our less common or rare chords. Notice that if I give you an ascending bass line that is, you would use capital 7 in first inversion, and you would follow it with a major 3 triad. So that progression actually uses 2 of the less common triads we have studied. And then again, if I gave you a descending bass line, you would know to use either capital 7 in root position or minor 5 in first inversion as part of your harmonization for that line. So let's apply this knowledge, our knowledge of some of the chords we've been talking about this unit in a slightly different way. And with these problems that I have on the board, some of which very similar to this may appear on the next test, I've not only included some progressions that include our less common or rare chords, but I've also included some chords that we have studied prior to spring break. And I know that's quite a long time ago, but the next test will go back to probably we started this unit with 2/7 chords. 2/7 chords. So before we get into this, let me go back to my review screen, and we'll add a few more of those chords that we studied before spring break in terms of whether or not they normally occur in major or minor keys. When it comes to the 2/7 chord, I don't know if you remember, but in major keys, the 2/7 chord is a minor 7th chord. A minor 7th chord. In minor keys, the 2/7 chord is half diminished. Always half diminished. Okay. That would be very good to memorize and know for the next test. Another chord that we talked about prior to spring break is not the 7 triad, but the 7/7 chord. That is a 7th chord on scale degree 7. And what we found out when we studied that particular chord is we found out that a 7th chord on scale degree 7 in major keys is a half diminished 7th chord, and a 7th chord on scale degree 7 in minor keys is a fully diminished 7th chord. Once again, this is helpful for you to have in your notes, to have in your mind, to have memorized for the next test. So, with all this information here, now let's go ahead and take it and apply it to some of the progressions I have on some separate screens. Okay, starting with number 1. Let me just verify to make sure that you can see this okay. Yes, it looks like it's within your view. All right. So we can see that there is a 4-chord progression here that includes a root position capital 7 triad. My first question to you would be, can you tell me or can you think in your own mind whether or not this progression occurs in a major key or a minor key? As you think about it, I hope you come up with the answer that this first progression must be in a minor key. because we only get the major 7 triad in minor keys, specifically natural minor. Okay. What Roman numerals could I use to fill in these blanks based on the progressions and the way we have studied using the 7-chorded root position? Well, because you know you're in a minor key now, the first chord should be minor 1. The 7th chord in root position goes to minor 4/6. And the last chord would most likely be a 5 chord for a half cadence. And this progression, as we just saw on a previous screen a few minutes ago, this progression harmonizes a descending stepwise bass line. Ask yourself, before I move on, what is one other less common chord that could be used to substitute for the root position 7 in this progression? And I hope you're thinking the minor 5/6. That is the minor 5 chord in first inversion. That could just as easily be substituted in place of the 7. The next problem uses a capital 3 chord, a major 3 triad. So the first question becomes again, is this progression in a major key or a minor key? Well, because the 3 triad is major, we know that we are then in a minor key, and we can fill in the remaining Roman numerals with that information, with that knowledge. So start the progression with tonic, and we're going to use a minor 1 chord. Knowing how the 3 chord is used, we know that it should go to a predominant chord. And I would probably, in this case, a good answer I would think would be the minor 4 chord. However, you could also answer this question by saying 2 diminished 6, or 3 chords can go to 6 chords. So again, 6 chords in minor keys are major, so really any of these 3 predominants would be fine as an answer for following the 3 chord in this progression. Just remember when you do these to pay attention to the type or the quality of your Roman numeral, knowing that you are in a minor key. The next progression includes a passing 6/4 chord. Going back and remembering and thinking about what you know about the passing 6/4 chord, what do you think might be the best Roman numeral to include in this blank here? We're starting, before I forget, I forgot to verify, are we in a major key or a minor key for number 3? The answer is we are in a major key because we know that from the fact that the 4 chord is capital. 4 chords are major in major keys. So this one we know for sure we're in a major key. Now, again, going back to the passing 6/4 nature of this chord, if I'm starting with a 4/6, then really a simple answer for following the passing 6/4 could be just a root position 4. Again, passing 6/4s are very good. They're used not all the time, but they are used very frequently for connecting 2 of the same chords in different inversion. 4/6, first inversion going to root position. The opposite is also true. For example, if I started with a root position 4, I could end up with a 4/6. The passing 6/4 gives you the note in the bass to connect those 2 different inversion instances of the same chord. Okay. One other possibility that I could use if I had to, instead of the root position 4, if you think about it, a 2 diminished 6, or excuse me, not a 2 diminished 6, but just a 2/6 would be possible in the blank instead of this root position 4 chord, because this chord has the same bass note as this chord. And so a passing 6/4 will connect the bass notes of these chords similarly, no matter which chord you use. For exercise number 4, I hope you can see right off the bat that since the tonic chord is major, that we are in a major key. And again, one of the most important pieces of information to remember about how to use the neighbor 6/4 is that the bass line of the chords surrounding the neighbor 6/4 and including the bass note of the neighbor 6/4, they are all the same. They are static or stationary. The bass does not move. The neighbor motion actually occurs in 2 of the upper voices when you use a neighbor 6/4, not the bass voice. So because the bass note for this chord and this chord and this chord will all be the same, a good rule of thumb to remember is to use the exact same chord in the exact same bass position on both sides of a neighbor 6/4 chord. That is a good, easy way to remember how to write a progression with a neighbor 6/4 chord and what chords to use surrounding that neighbor 6/4 chord. The 5th exercise here, this actually goes back to Unit 1 of this class, and I know that seems like ages ago, back in January and February, but I have a 2-6-5 going to a 5-4-2. Do you remember your chart from the first unit as to what does a 5-4-2 go to? Well, hopefully you'll remember that it must go to a 1-6. A 1-6. My question here is, how do I know? Do I write a capital 1-6 here, or do I write a lowercase 1-6 for a minor key? Well, I need to tell what kind of key I'm in, major or minor, and the way I can get that information is to look at the quality of the 2-7 chord. Since the 2-7 chord is half diminished, I know that I am in a minor key, not a major key. And if I am in a minor key, or since I am in a minor key, I should say, then I know what my answer to this blank here should be a lowercase or minor 1-6. So just a few more examples, and then we'll move on to something else. Number 6 at the top, you can see from the very first chord, the major 1 triad, that we are in a major key here. And if you want to take a moment or several seconds to think about what's the best chord to put in this blank following the passing 6/4, go ahead and pause this lecture video and think about that and write in what you think should be the answer. I really think the only sensible answer to fill in for this blank would be going from 1 passing 6/4 to first inversion 1, 1-6. Again, this will allow the bass note of this chord to be stepwise right in between the bass note of this chord and the bass note of this chord for the passing motion, which is necessary to have in the bass for a passing 6/4 chord. Let me skip number 7 for the moment. Let's go to number 8. A 7 fully diminished 4-2. This is a chord that we studied and talked about before spring break. And if you recall, we actually had a chart that not only included the resolution chords for all the inversions of 5-7, but we also included all the bass positions of 7-7 in that chart as well. And it probably wouldn't hurt me to recopy that chart on one of these screens here before we finish. But if you have that chart handy in your notes, go ahead and look at it now. If you don't need the chart to look at, that is perfectly fine. In fact, that is excellent. But a 7 diminished 4-2 will typically go, oh, by the way, are we in a major key or a minor key? Well, because the 7 diminished 4-2 is fully diminished, we are in a minor key. A minor key. And therefore, this can go to minor 1-6-4 or it can go to root position 5-7. Either one of these chords would be fine, a fine resolution for the 7 diminished 4-2 to move to. The last one that I have here, noticing that the 7 triad is major in quality, that means I am in a minor key. And therefore my first chord will be lowercase Roman numeral 1. Now I believe, several minutes ago in this lecture, we looked at how this particularly less common chord, 7-6, is used. It is used to harmonize an ascending stepwise bass line. And when it is used in that fashion, the capital 7-6 goes to a root position capital 3 chord. And those would be the 2 Roman numerals to use to fill in the blanks in this particular problem. Now, let's go ahead and talk about what kind of chord comes after a 2-4-2. You may recall before spring break that I did not give you a resolution chart. We did not write down one that contains all the various bass positions of the 2-7 chord. But using our common sense, we can come up with an educated answer for what chord should fill this blank. Number one, we have to remember that 2 7s, just like 2 triads, are dominant in function. And therefore, they love to move to 5 chords. To 5 chords. They also are okay moving to 1-6-4 to 5. In other words, the cadential 6-4 right before it goes to the cadential 5. But they do like to go to 5 chords most often. Now, because this is in 3rd inversion, or 4-2 inversion, that means the 7th of this chord is in the bass. And as such, it is a tendency tone. The 7th of any 7th chord is always a tendency tone. And it needs to move down by step. So rather than going to a root position 5, a 2-4-2 chord with the 7th in the bass should really go to a 1st inversion 5. Chords in 4-2 inversion like to go to 1st inversion chords. Just as a 5-4-2, for example, goes to a 1-6, so also a 2-4-2 chord likes to go to 5-6. And just for a quick visual on that, let me go to another screen and show you that in the key of C, for example, this 2-4-2 goes to a 1st inversion 5. In fact, I have taken it to a 5-6-5. That's not hardly any different from a triad in 1st inversion. It's just a 7th chord in 1st inversion. Okay? So again, in this key, we have C in the bass, I have A in the tenor, D in the alto, and F in the soprano. The 7th of this chord, and by the way, 2 7 chords only have one tendency tone, and that is the 7th of the chord. That tendency tone happens to be in the bass. And so, as such, it needs to move down by step, which is going to go to a B in my GBD or GBDF 5-7 chord. That forces a 1st inversion 7th chord, a 5-6-5. Okay? So here I have B in the bass, G in the tenor, D in the alto, and F in the soprano. So because of the tendency tone and the fact that it has to go down by step, means that a 2-4-2 really should go to either a 5-6 or a 5-6-5. That is a dominant chord in 1st inversion. Last but not least, let's go ahead and talk about whether or not this progression now is in a major or a minor key. Because the quality or the type of the 2-7 is a minor 7th chord, right? I do not have any half diminished markings for this 2-7 chord. Then I know that I am in a major key. To finish up today, I'd like to just say a few words about the first section of the Test 2 review. I will talk about this just a little bit to get you started, and then your assignment for the remainder of the week is to try to get this Test 2 review completed. It is quite lengthy, but that gives you just a lot of opportunity for practice. One other thing I need to mention before I get into this is I will be sending you a PDF file of this Test 2 review through Canvas. So you'll be able to access it, you'll be able to open it up and hopefully print it out so that you can go through all of the exercises on the various pages of this review. So, section 1 of the review, right at the top, it's a section on spelling chords. And the instructions ask us to spell the following chords given their Roman numeral and quality. Add the appropriate key where indicated. Alright, so again, I don't know how well you can see this from your vantage point, but this first chord on the Test 2 review is a 2 half diminished 6-5. 2 half diminished 6-5. Because it is a half diminished 7th chord on scale degree 2, we should know that we are in a minor key for the first measure, a minor key. And I've also given you key signature here. What minor key has 3 flats in its key signature? And you should deduce, well, that's the key of C minor, and you would be correct. So I would write C minor in this blank. And then I would write the chord on the staff. The notes would be D, F, A flat, and C. Put them in first inversion, noting that you are in the bass clef, which means the F is going to go on the bottom. So you should have F, A flat, which is there from the key signature. It's already A flat. C, and then D, from the bottom up. The next problem gives us a 7 fully diminished 4-2 chord. A 7 fully diminished 7 chord only occurs in minor keys. Minor keys. So based on this key signature of 3 sharps, what minor key contains 3 sharps? And that is the key, of course, of F sharp minor. F sharp minor. Now, be careful, the spelling, the root of these lowercase or diminished 7 chords, the root of these chords is always the leading tone, or T, not the lowered 7th scale degree. It is the raised 7th scale degree. Okay. So, think about this. If we are in F sharp minor, and we need to find T of that key, then we need to go down just a half step below Do. So Do is F sharp. That means the leading tone to F sharp is the pitch E sharp. So the root of this chord will be E sharp. And spelling a fully diminished 7th chord on E sharp gives us E sharp, G sharp, B, and D. Placing that chord in 3rd inversion, noting again we're in the bass clef, that means the D has to be on the bottom. And so from the bottom up, I would spell this chord as D, then E sharp and G sharp and B. And that'll have the right spelling, the right notes of the chord in the correct inversion in the key of F sharp minor. The third example at the top of your test review includes a 2-7. It is not half diminished 7. That means because of the lowercase Roman numeral, it is a minor 7th chord. So a 2-7 that is a minor 7th chord always occurs naturally in a major key. A major key. Given the key signature of 4 flats, we know therefore that the key for this chord is A flat major. We have to determine that first. Otherwise we won't know what scale degree 2 is, or the root of this chord is. But once we have the key, we will know. So A flat major, The root of this chord should be then B flat, because that is scale degree 2 of A flat major. And to spell a minor minor 7th chord on B flat, we should get the notes B flat, D flat, F, and A flat. Placing the chord in root position, it is not in inversion. We're still in bass clef. We can include the B flat here, which is flat from the key signature, then the D flat, which is also flat from the key signature, then the F, and then the A flat, which is also flat from the key signature. So B flat, D flat, F, A flat. And finally, the last problem in section 1, we are in the key of E minor. That is given to us this time, and we need to spell a dominant, a 5-4-3 chord in the key of E minor. Remember again that any major 5 chord or 5-7 chord in minor keys will contain T, or the leading tone. And so we are going to need to raise that pitch with an accidental as we spell the chord on the staff. Just like we needed T in this chord, we needed to raise the E as E sharp. So also here, wherever T occurs in the chord, we're going to have to raise it with an accidental. So let's think about this chord. In the key of E minor, the root of this chord is going to be B, because B is scale degree 5 in E minor. And to spell a major minor 7th chord, or dominant 7th, which is what these 5-7 chords always are, would be B, D sharp, F sharp, and A. Placing the chord in second inversion, or 4-3 inversion, knowing again we're in the bass clef, that means the F sharp will be on the bottom of this chord we write. Okay. So F sharp, that's already sharp from the key signature. A natural, B, and then the highest note, because F sharp is on the bottom, the highest note will be D sharp. And you have to physically add a sharp to your D, otherwise it will be a minor 5 chord, which is not being called for here. Okay? So F sharp, A, B, D sharp. So that's as far as I would like to go today for this lecture. Again, as I mentioned, I will be sending you this test to review as a PDF file through Canvas. It is not to hand in, it's not to turn in to me, but I do want you to complete as much of it as you can during this week. It is excellent practice for our upcoming test. All I can tell you at this point is that I would like to have the test next week. I don't have a particular date set yet, nor do I have a particular time, but I do plan to give you one more lecture, send you one more lecture by the end of this week, hopefully Friday of this week, that I will treat as an official review for our test, and then I'll be able to give you the more detailed test information about next week. So, once again, please keep an eye out in Canvas for this test to review. It is for you to complete for your practice only. It is not to hand in. And I really strongly encourage you to do all of this review so that you can get an idea of what kind of questions will be on the test. So until next time, which will be the official test review, until next time, have a good week, and please let me know if you have any questions.